Now, Bedfordshire, we love Bedfordshire, don't we? It's a diverse, beautiful, vibrant county. It's the home to Britain's drunkest driver. The person caught 8 times over the limit tops the national list released to coincide with the annual Christmas crackdown. Now, I would suggest that 8 times over the legal limit is the sign of a different kind of driver. But it does suggest that we need to keep on top of this all year round. I really think zero tolerance is the only surefire way. You have a tiny, tiny window of flexibility that would accommodate a boozy pudding or mouthwash or something like that. But that's it. You get caught having a drink, you don't drive. Well, Justin Dealey has been speaking to drivers in Hertfordshire. Morning, Justin.
Morning, Iain.
Justin, what have people been saying to you today?
Well, do you know what? Interestingly enough, you're going to hear from some motorists later on. They're talking about zero tolerance. The majority actually agree with your views. You're about to hear from Michael in Redbourne right now. He's been caught drink driving twice.
Wow.
Here's what he had to say.
First time I was 19, yes, I was over the limit. I think then there was less cars on the road anyway. It was over the limit, but thought I could still drive. The second time, I thought it was unlucky, actually. There was a gap of 11 years, and that was in London then. Again, I'm not that far over the limit, however, that's the annoying thing, but I think it's sharper now. I wouldn't drink and drive again, ever.
Let me ask you this. Did you feel guilty?
Not the first time, no. Second time, yes. That's been a change of attitude, I think, towards drink drivers as well. I'm not saying it was always a fun thing to drink and drive, but I think there was less, because there was less cars, and also we only ever drunk beer. Seems to me that the worst problem now is possibly not always alcohol, but maybe even drugs these days.
I mean, you mentioned that you'd never do it, so when you go out now, you don't even have one and drive?
Yes, I do have a pint after playing golf and then driving home.
But that's it, you go no further.
That's all you can have these days, one unit, I believe.
And we're talking today about how many chances drivers deserve, so how many chances do you think nowadays a driver would be entitled to for drink driving?
One chance, and that's it. They should. Again, I was lucky. Perhaps I had a year's ban and only £100 fine. I believe now you can get a 3-year ban and maybe £200 or £300 fine as a minimum. Yeah. So there are factors. So the higher the ban, I think is a good thing. That was as a deterrent factor, and obviously the cost of the fine.
Let me ask you finally about this man in Bedfordshire who's been caught. He was 8 times over the limit. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that's poor these days. 8 times over the limit. There's over the limit, and then there's over the limit, and then there's over the limit, and 8 times over the limit is a lot of times over the limit. And quite honestly, it would appear to me that anybody driving that alcohol, they can't be in control of the car. No. I think also what I found out was that the reaction thing between when alcohol's in your system, and I know for first hand what it's like to brake with alcohol in your system, because alcohol slows that system down. Therefore, if you're drinking and driving and you go to hit the brakes, it's going to take a lot longer for you to work out, or your brain to work it out, to hit the brakes. Therefore, by that time, that's a second lost, too late, accident occurs.
That fella's got me angry.
Yeah, I thought he might do.
There's over the limit, then there's over the limit, then there's over the limit. No, there's not. There's over the limit. That's it.
Well, it's interesting what Michael's saying there. He's been caught for drink driving twice now. I think his last offence was over 20 years ago. The roads, of course, were very different back then. He says he definitely won't do it again, but he still has that 1 pint of lager and then drives home from his golf club.
He was annoyed he got caught the second time because he was only just over the limit. Listen, it happened. What happens once, you lose your licence, that's it, game over.
Well, I've got no sympathy for anybody who goes to the pub, and Iain, I see this pretty much every single weekend. People still think it's acceptable to do it. They will go down the pub, drink lots of beer or wine, and then get behind the wheel of their car and drive home. They think that's acceptable, but I do have a bit of sympathy for the next day. Some people may have gone to the pub, had 3 or 4 pints of lager, they wake up the next morning, they're driving their car, they think they're absolutely fine, and they get pulled over and they are over the limit. I do have a bit of sympathy for those people, but certainly none whatsoever for anybody who thinks it's fine to get drunk and then drive their vehicle.
Justin, thank you very much. Joined now by Jeanette Miller, the Association of Motor Offence Lawyers President and Managing Director of Geoffrey Miller Solicitors. Jeanette, clearly giving people leeway, it doesn't work for everyone. So why don't we just have a clear rule, you don't have a drink and you don't drive?
Well, Iain, I think that would be incredibly difficult to police, first of all. And then the point that Justin was just making about the morning after cases, I think it would catch a significant number of people who have had a drink the night before. They've waited. They think they're safe to drive the next day, but they still do have some alcohol in the system.
Tough. If they think they're safe to drive the next day, that still doesn't work now, does it? People can still be over the limit.
True,
now.
But the point that you're making, if it's zero tolerance, there may be people who are under currently the legal limit, but if they're supposed to have zero alcohol in their system, I think an awful lot of motorists would fall foul of a zero tolerance rule. That said, there are some countries that do have zero tolerance, particularly some quite creative situations. In Germany, for example, depending on the age of the driver, young drivers under the age of 21 are expected to have zero alcohol in their system. As with professional drivers, so if you're driving a bus or a lorry or something like that, then you also are expected to have zero alcohol in your system. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But over here, there's a major problem with this one-size-fits-all, drink X number of units and you'll be fine. It just doesn't work like that. Everybody's biological makeup is different, and that has to be factored in.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, if you're a big 7-foot strapping fella, you hold your booze differently to a short, petite 5-foot woman, don't you?
Yeah, and I must say, I mean, I have friends who I cringe when I hear the way that they decide to drink and then drive next day or later that night, because somebody who is, as you say, a petite lady who has a large glass of wine but hasn't eaten all day could actually be over the limit. So that's part of the problem, the education side of things. I hear what you're saying about there being tougher penalties. The penalties are quite tough already.
What are the penalties?
At the moment, the minimum penalty for drink driving, and this is the mandatory minimum, doesn't matter how difficult your life is going to be without it, you will lose your licence for a 12-month period. That is the minimum. But if you're caught twice within 10 years, as with your chap earlier, then it's a 3-year minimum and a maximum £5,000 fine. Now, you could face that the maximum penalty is actually 6 months in prison. It's quite rare for somebody to get a prison sentence for drink driving these days. I suspect your 280 or 8 times the limit chap may well have ended up in prison. Right. I don't know.
Would it okay, if we can't agree on the zero tolerance, would it not make sense then to be stricter? If you get caught drink driving once, you get banned for a year. You get caught twice, that's it, you lose your licence, you can't drive again.
What about the chap who, first time round, just like the guy in the interview earlier, he's a young 19-year-old, I don't know what his level was then, but a bit foolish, made a mistake. Second time around, he says he was just over. I think that's part of the problem. I don't think penalty is the way to address this. I think education, and sadly, with all the budget cuts all over the place, education for drink driving has really taken a hit.
But Jeanette, we know it's bad. We know. What do we wait for? Do we wait for someone to go and knock someone over and kill them before we take their licence away?
No, it's horrific when that happens. But I think if you do not spend money on educating people, and people are still walking around saying, "Oh, you can have 1 unit, or you can have 2 units, and you'll be fine," that's the problem. Not making it tougher for those who fall foul of the law because of their ignorance.
But if we made it zero tolerance, then their ignorance wouldn't be a factor, would it? Because everyone would know the rules. You don't drink and drive.
I think we'd find that millions of drivers would be taken off the road, and that would have a massive impact on economy. That would criminalise a hell of a lot of people who still they haven't had the sufficient knowledge to be able to deal with a zero tolerance position, particularly when we've got actually the highest drink drive limit in Europe, I think. So we've already got a problem now, and we've got a problem with alcohol generally in this country, in my view.
Jeanette, thank you very much indeed. Jeanette Miller, the Association of Motor Offence Lawyers President and Managing Director of Jeffrey Miller Solicitors. Well, what do you think?